Line 17. What other numbers do we see in there? Well, things like base excess. I just want you to think about base excess as all those electrolytes I talked about. Yeah. And if your base excess is good, your electrolytes are good. And if your base excess is negative, very negative, you have not too much base, but too much acid. And if your base excess is very positive, then you have too much alkali. Yeah. That's all. That way you don't have to do the math. I can show you how to do the math at some point, and we do that with patients. Bicarb is stupid. I was like, I just need to get you on record, which I will, the director of ICU. I'm like, all right, I may be wrong, and I'm often wrong, and I go to somebody that has sat all the exams and is an anesthetist for this stuff, or a cardiologist or whatever. Bicarb. I tell all my students it's stupid and you don't need to worry about it. What is your opinion? And he goes, the only use of bicarb is to say, what is the only thing on blood gases that is absolutely useless? C, bicarb. It is an effect, not a cause. I want you to think about bicarb, HCO3 minus, as what's the H, which is the H in pH, which is the acid, which is H2CO3, which is water, plus CO2. Yeah? This is what I need you to understand. Does CO2 exist if you are alive? And it's the sign that you're alive. Yeah? If you are not alive, do you generate CO2? No. So the CO2 exists because you are alive. And if you're alive, you make CO2 from aerobic metabolism. That has to go somewhere, yeah? Do you want it to dissolve into water? Yeah? Or you want it to attach to, and this is the coolest thing, it'll attach to a red cell, it'll attach to hemoglobin. So if it's in your muscles and it can attach to hemoglobin, will the hemoglobin carry it back to your lungs? Yeah, and then when it's at your lungs, can it just jump ship and leave? And if it does it just build up in your muscles? Yeah, which will do what to the pH? Decrease. Does that sound like it's good for your muscles? Because if the muscle pH gets too low, that is ceviche. Yeah, you take citric acid, lemon juice, pH of 4, and apply it to fish. It goes opaque. It's called ceviche. Yeah, do you want to ceviche your muscles? No, that's rhabdomyolysis. You've just cooked the muscle. No, don't do it. So the CO2, you want it to leave. Now, what happens to CO2 if you put too much CO2 into water? Does it form bubbles? When you open a can of Coke, does it form bubbles? If you formed bubbles in your blood, would you be dead? Yeah, because those bubbles would literally block blood flow to your brain. So in order to not have it form bubbles, we get it to dissolve into water. And if I have more CO2, will I have more carbonic acid? Which will do what to my pH? Decrease, because that will be more of those. More H is more, the H in pH. It's a negative logarithmic scale. The math is awful. Even I don't understand it anymore. I used to. I could do this. That was 1994. None of you were born yet. And I haven't been able to do it since I finished uni. It didn't matter. Now, if you have more of these, does that just look like you're going to have more of those? Yeah, CO2 is just the CO3. So if you, for some reason, have more CO2 in your blood, you'll have more bicarb in your blood. That's not buffering. That's just the CO2 has to live somewhere so it doesn't form bubbles. Yeah? And if you are hyperventilating, you get your CO2 to 20. Yeah? If you just have much less CO2 in your blood, will you have much less bicarb in your blood? Yes or no? Yes. And if you have less of this in your blood, will you have less hydrogen in your blood? What effect will that have on your pH? Increase. You can call it compensating, or you can just call it trying to not die. It's much easier. Are they trying to not die? Yeah. Cool. Are they trying to not die? No. Maybe we should just let them. Make sense? It's very hard to raise your CO2. So that's all bicarb is. Now, buffering against lactic acid. Take some lactic acid, i.e. buttermilk. Oh, I have this live tomorrow. Buttermilk is lactic acid, milk with lactic acid in it. Yeah, they've turned the milk sugar into lactic acid, and it's sour. And buttermilk plus sodium bicarbonate will make sodium lactate and water and CO2. Yeah, and does that CO2 form bubbles? Have you ever made pancakes? Yeah, you've got buttermilk, an acid, sodium bicarbonate, slightly alkali, and you make bubbles. And what happens to those bubbles when you apply heat? They expand. Do your pancakes do that? Make sense? If you've ever made sourdough, yeah, you're using yeast to make CO2 from glucose, and then the bubbles expand. Yeah, and lactic acid, literally the saccharine sourdough is lactic acid. Yeah. Now, I just really need you to know that if you have just any kind of acid forming, that will be more of these. And this will basically turn into this, will turn into this. So any acid going on in your body will push the equation this way to make more CO2. Yeah? And does more CO2 in your life sound bad? And if that sounds bad, should you breathe more? Yeah. And if you breathe more, will that be a problem anymore? And if you don't breathe more, will you die?